Hey, Ken.
Oh, yes.
Ken, have we ever met?
Tango. Well, it takes two to tango,
Or P-Tango, as they say.
but it takes two to
See what I
tango.
did
But,
there?
but one person leads.
Ken, have I ever met you? I don't think we've ever met, have we?
No, I don't think so. So it's nice to cyber meet you.
Yeah, nice to meet you. So, tell us a little something about yourself, Ken, so we know who you are, what you believe. Whatever.
Oh, well, I started life as a child, but you probably already knew that. Actually, I was born at a young age, so that's a fact right there. Yeah.
Ba-dum-bum.
Boom,
All
boom.
these dad
Boom,
jokes,
boom.
though.
Ba-da-ba-ba-da-bum. Wow.
You're definitely a dad, that's for sure.
So Ken and I were having a big chat in the chat stream, and I wasn't basically. Sorry, Ken, you got to dumb it down for me a little bit, but I wasn't basically following what you were saying. So if you could reiterate your question, that would be really helpful.
Yes, so the issue is that you had pointed out that creationism has failed when it goes to court. And I was asking why that would be an issue, why that matters. So we came down to discussing that you seem to imply that adhering to truth, to reality, to facts, to evidence, that those are universal imperatives. So I was just asking why you think that's the case. That's why I ended up digging all the way back to what view you might have about how the universe came to be, whether it was created by design or whether it came about accidentally.
Well, I have no idea how the universe came to be. Okay, so I can't comment on that. But what we could deal with is our reality right now, and that's the reality we experience through our senses.
And that's sorry. Go ahead.
No. Yeah. So we experience reality through our senses, and that's reliable. We've proven that over and over again to a degree of reliability. So nothing is maximally like reliable. You know, we haven't got 100% on anything, but we can deal through this reality through our senses. And you were saying sort of, why is that reliable? Is that what you were sort of?
No. So, for example, the way you put it now is that we can experience reality through our senses. So that's an option, right? It's a subjective personal preference. So what if
I think it's all we got.
Okay, well that's a dogmatic assertion. So let's say that you believe that's all we got. So what? What if I choose otherwise? What is the universal imperative for me to adhere to reality?
No. Well, now you've got to prove to me that you've got something outside of your senses to experience any sort of reality.
Well, I'm afraid that the first step would be for you to justify your demand for proof.
So I'm saying that all we have is our senses that we experience the world with. We siphon information through our brains and we make judgments on the reality that we exist in. I'm saying at the moment, that's all we have. If there's something outside that, you need to produce proof of that.
Sure, semi-honest.
So what counts as proof, though? I just want to clarify. What would count as good evidence?
Throw stuff
Because,
at me and
Tony,
we'll examine it.
Forward thinking of minds. You see, it's irrational to think chemistry can consider the future or plan for what needs to happen in the future. If our brain is nothing but chemistry, then it couldn't be possible for us to plan for the future. Because chemistry, it's irrational to think that complex chemical interactions can occur that will plan in other sets of complex chemical interactions that must take place in that same brain in order for a person to think about or do a particular thing in the future. For example, if I say, I need to pay my mortgage ahead of time for the next 6 months because, or let's say, my daughter's going to college and she's going to need me to I'm going to have to start a checking account, give her a debit card at the beginning of next semester because she's going to need money for eats and she's going to need money for school books. And I'm going to start an account and I need to put $1,000 start money in that. And I need to do that in 6 months. And then so that the chemical interactions stay there to keep that memory, and then set up all these other chemical interactions to say, oh, I've got to go do this. Now let me go do it. See, that's chemical interactions setting up complex sets of other chemical interactions that have to take place in the future, right?
Yeah.
It's irrational.
No. What do we know about the brain?
That's not plausible that chemistry can do that.
Okay, I've got your point now. What do we know about the brain? What have we observed about the brain?
A lot of things, I guess.
Hmm. Like like to break it down, what I'm getting at is it's a bunch of chemical neuroelectrical reactions between synapses and neurons, isn't it?
Yeah,
very complex. Incredibly complex.
What we truly know about the brain is that it's a computer that governs the interactions of the body. It regulates the activities of the organs. We know that.
Well, you can call it a computer if you want, but I'm saying it's an incredibly.
But you're saying it's sentient. The brain itself is sentient.
Mine is.
Is it rational to think that matter feels depressed or happy?
Sometimes I do.
Right, but is it rational to think that a package of matter can feel depressed or happy?
I'm a package of matter.
That's not answering the question.
Yeah, I'm answering your question. I'm a package of matter, and sometimes I feel depressed.
No,
how am I not answering your question?
Well, because you're not actually telling me whether or not it's
person.
No, I'm not telling you what you want to hear.
No, you're not telling me.
No, that's a property of
what's
person.
rational about it.
That's the point he's making.
You're just pointing out that you do feel depressed or happy.
Maybe you need to rephrase.
No, I phrased it beautifully. Is it rational to believe that matter can feel depressed or happy?
Am I matter?
No, that's not an answer, Tony.
I don't think that's all you are. See, if you're not starting at the same point that we are, then it makes it difficult to move the conversation.
Yeah.
So that's what I was getting at.
But you're also not matter. You're something more than matter also.
And there you have the flaw. Now you have to.
Oh, you're trying to move the person.
Okay.
I had asked you.
Do you think that all matter is a person?
Hold on.
No.
What you're trying to do is
made a claim.
Hold on. What you're trying to do, Tony, is shift the burden by asking a question instead of directly answering the question. If it's rational or not to believe that matter can be depressed or feel happy. See, instead you say, I don't. I think that's irrational. I can show though that you're more than matter.
Okay.
Okay, you're more than matter. And one of the reasons is you feel happy or depressed. Because it's irrational to believe that matter can feel happy or depressed.
Have you ever heard of serotonin and dopamine?
Yes. Of course. But what is
logical? Do you know they're relevant to the level of anxiety, happiness, sadness that you feel in your life?
Yes. So, Tony, here's the thing.
That could be the reason.
I say yes. I said yes. I acknowledge that, Tony.
So,
but here's the thing.
Take physical chemicals that either stop the uptake of those particular stuff in your brain that makes you happy or sad. Do you know that's a physical thing that you can take and it changes your brain chemistry?
I understand that, Tony, and I acknowledge that dopamine can make a person feel happier. I understand that. But here's the problem: is we can all show that chemistry in the brain, what's happening physically in the brain, can change what somebody's feeling or even how the patterns of their thinking. I agree. But we can also show that patterns of thinking or that sentient processes, intelligent processes, change the physical brain. That's been demonstrated by psychologists.
Yeah.
If you have a habit of watching porn on a regular basis, the structure of your brain will change. If you have a habit of drinking alcohol, your brain structure will change. If you're an engineer and you think constantly about mechanical stuff, constantly, your brain will change in response to that thinking pattern. So we can show that the mind affects the brain, and the brain can affect the mind. That just demonstrates that we're dualistic. We have a mind and we also have a brain. That's not proof that mind is equal to brain.
To define the mind.
Mind is a sentient, non-physical component that produces non-physical.
So how do you prove there's a non-physical component to my very physical brain?
Because your mind produces things that don't physically exist, and it's irrational to believe that material processes can create things that don't have any mass.
Well, I understand that you feel it's irrational, but like my brain does very physical things that promote my happiness or my sadness or my ability to drive in traffic.
If I asked you to give me a scientific reason to believe that your chemistry in your brain can produce things that have no mass, you wouldn't be able to do it.
Produce things that have no mass.
Like thoughts, like an imaginary dream house.
Can you have thoughts without
I invented a purple hopping schmuckatuki. And the schmuckatuki has 12 eyes, 36 legs, and reads books constantly. And I envision this thing, but it doesn't physically exist.
Can you do that without a brain?
But it doesn't matter. It's non-physical. The thing that I created in my mind is non-physical. See, what's the rationale in believing that a material package of chemistry, matter, can create something that has no mass, does not exist at all? So you're jumping from categories, from the material to the non-material. See, it's irrational to think that the material processes of chemistry can step outside of the material realm to create something that's imaginary.
So are you saying that mass is relevant to the natural and non-mass is relevant to the supernatural?
And when it comes to mental abstracts, I would say yes.
Like I'm not putting words in your mouth. I'm trying to just work out what you're saying. Okay.
I think when it comes to mental abstracts, yes.
So are they supernatural?
I would say the evidence shows that they are.
But can you have these experiences with these things without a natural brain?
No, and you can't have them without a mind either.
And then that's where the evidence stops.
No, it just shows that we're dualistic. See, I've already addressed that.
Well, you can infer that, but you have no evidence.
I do infer it. I do. Minds produce things that don't physically exist.
And you're saying that things that don't physically exist.
Can you explain to me how atoms sharing or stealing electrons with other atoms is capable, no matter how, adding millions of these processes, atoms sharing and stealing electrons from each other, which is what chemistry is. Lots of that, if you have enough of that going on, it can produce something that's completely imaginary and doesn't physically exist. See, that's an illogical, irrational leap into something to believe that it can. It just doesn't make any sense.
Does critical thought have mass?
Thoughts have no mass.
So is critical thought a product of your physical brain?
No.
That's the point. So can you do...
Because thoughts are not made of matter.
Wait, Neff, can you do critical thought without your physical brain?
No, and you can't do it without a mind either.
You have a big problem with your argument.
No, you have a problem of showing that mind only is produced by brain.
No, I'm not. I'm saying that we have evidence of our brains and the activity that it does, right? That's our evidence. I'm not saying anything new here. I'm not proposing anything. That's where the evidence stops. If you have anything above that, you need to provide evidence for it.
Why?
Have you heard of the experiments on people that were actually they were in a coma and they were still processing the information that they're hearing outside of their body, right?
Yeah.
So there's also another experiment that was conducted to verify whether or not, whenever you conduct an action, like say that you were told to do something, right, and then you were told not to do that same thing the next time that they were asked to do it initially. The thought process never actually goes through, even though you heard and received the information, right? So if your brain isn't conducting the activity, there apparently something there allowed you to register this without your brain activity going on. There's actual studies that have been conducted regarding this. So you have to prove that the mind is only within the brain, and that it's not something that's contingent upon the mind.
Do we know everything about the brain?
No, absolutely not.
No, we don't. And there's some theories. You know how people have these out-of-body experiences and all these things, and they go towards the light and all that sort of stuff. Well, there's hypotheses that exist that say that we actually secrete our own neurochemicals and highs and lows that give us these dreamlike states before we die. So, you know, that's a very physical thing. I don't understand how you're making the difference between a mind and the physical brain.
I'm not understanding how that matters.
That's why I was explaining to you about that experiment.
I'm not saying it's particularly an issue. I'm just saying that I've gone to the level where, right, we have this level of evidence based in neuroscience at the moment with our very physical brains. Now, you want to say there's something outside our physical brains influencing us that's somehow esoteric or supernatural or whatever. I'm just saying, if you can provide like tangible evidence for that, I'll hop on board.
But the first step is for you to justify your demand for evidence.
Tangible? You're asking for physical evidence of the non-physical mind?
But hold on a second. Hold on.
Okay, go ahead, man.
The first step is you need to justify your demand for evidence.
Justify my demand for evidence. Don't we all do that?
If we all do it, then we need a justification for it. So that's the question. What is your justification for demanding evidence?
That you've made a claim.
And you see,
I'm willing to accept that claim if you give me evidence for it.
Right. And the question is why? How is that even an issue?
Because if you're going to make a claim that demands evidence.
Tony, what he's pointing out is that you have to have a basis for reality and evidence for your own way of thinking in order to argue that somebody's claim is false.
And I'm sorry, Tony. I don't mean to.
No, wait. Okay, sorry, stop. I'm not claiming anybody's claim is false. I'm only asking for evidence. There's a big difference.
So, Tony,
do you accept that?
Much like what I was talking about earlier with AJ, this is an unfalsifiable claim, whether or not the mind and the brain are contingent upon one another. Okay, so either way, we would both have to have evidence of this. Unless you know literally all things, there's no way that we can provide that evidence.
But
if you did know all things, then you would be God. So therefore, you still have to admit that God exists. So there's a lot of issues with this.
I think Tony is just saying he has a subjective personal preference for evidence, and that's it. He just prefers it. And my reply could be, so what? Why should I adhere to your personal preferences? That's not a universal imperative. It's just something you choose, like you might choose one ice cream flavor over another one.
Exactly. You don't have to adhere to what I'm saying. I'm not telling you that anything you're saying is false. I'm saying if you make a claim, at least back it up.
Because that's what you prefer personally. I mean, I get it.
Well, okay, if you want to put it that way. I think we do very well in our reality by working with things that are backed up, that have measurable consequences and our ability to process things. I think things that sort of open to interpretation and can be pulled apart by anybody and interpreted this way and a million other ways, causes more problems than solve.
And
So
I think we would.
Well,
And I
how
think
about
we
this?
would all agree with you. I don't think that's an issue whatsoever. I think the issue is that you have had to come to the position where you're asking for evidence just because you have a subjective personal preference for it. And okay, that's one issue. I mean, that's fine. At least you're not claiming that it's a universal imperative to provide evidence for things that are outside of your experience.
Absolutely not.
So Tony, I was going to say, what exactly does constitute as evidence in this case? I'm just still trying to understand.
Well, evidence is subjective, isn't it? I mean, evidence,
right?
Like there's flimsy evidence and hard evidence. So, look, I would like something that I could like test. Is that sound unreasonable?
Hey, I'll give you a test.
Okay, so how about this? Sorry, I don't want to cut you off there. Have you ever heard of topoisomerase?
No.
So it's a protein that's designed specifically for the purpose of cutting DNA, right? And there's two different forms that I'm aware of. One will cut both strands of the double helix, and then one will cut one and then surgically apply it on the adjacent end so that it will unravel to an extent there. The reason I believe this is good evidence is because it takes forethought and understanding of the laws of physics for this to even be developed and used and utilized within your cell in the first place. So it's a protein, like I said, it's designed to unravel your double helix, because you understand it's coiled, right? It's like it gets like really tightly woven, right? Yeah. Well, if it gets too tight, it won't go anywhere. There won't be any way for it to break out so it can redistribute RNA and create another set of RNA to create another cell, right? So in order for it to get past that, it has to be able to unravel itself within your cell, so that it has to do that multiple times throughout the chain. And I think there's like 6 different spots where they have to do this. I forgot the exact way it's designed, but it basically looks like a hexagram whenever they do the. I have to show you a video about it, but basically the way it's shown there, it will come in and it will basically snip, and then it will reapply on the adjacent end, and then it will surgically reattach the double helix strands after it's been loosened. So that to me is pretty good evidence that something here had to have been designed, in the sense that it has to know about this law, right, that requires for the tension to be released. Otherwise, it won't go anywhere, and you wouldn't be able to recreate another strand of RNA. So, and this is an ongoing process that's constantly happening in your cell.
Right. How in the world could natural chemistry produce something designed to fix the DNA molecule like that? That just doesn't make sense.
You understand that incredulity is not evidence, don't you?
It's not evidence of incredulity. It's not incredulity.
It's
a positive argument from the design features of the molecular machinery.
I would
consider this evidence to infer.
The dictionary for the definition of incredulity, Nev,
it's
that
not.
statement would be there.
It's not. It's not from incredulity. It's positive assertion of obvious information design.
Let me put it this way.
It shows intent, though.
This particular aspect.
Yes, it shows intent. That's it. Pigs can fly.
This particular aspect of DNA coding and encoding and all that sort of thing is really complex, and I don't think it could happen by natural means.
Complexity doesn't rise from chemistry.
It's incredulity. It's not evidence.
No, it is, because we know that chemistry doesn't.
So either way, we have to make an inference, right?
No,
Tony?
It's evidence, Tony.
You have to
evidence because
that there was an intelligent designer, or that all things have come about by natural processes. And in either way, it's a belief. So we don't have any way of verifying and proving either one of our positions there.
Tony, it's an argument from evidence, because we know that chemistry doesn't produce complex things.
But Tony agreed with you, Biggs, because he already stated that evidence is subjective. So now he's arguing his subjective interpretation of evidence versus what he would see as your subjective interpretation of evidence. So we're lost in a sea of
All right.
subjectivism.
No, you're probably right, Ken. All right. Do we have evidence of natural things happening naturally?
We have evidence of natural things existing based on pre-existing information, and the only known source of information is mind.
Matter doesn't make anything complex.
But matter is complex.
But it didn't make anything complexity.
No, matter doesn't make.
We don't. That's right. We don't know anything. No scientist on this earth knows of matter causing increasing complexity.
All right, let me put it this way. Is the gestation of a fetus a complex act?
It's programmed by a package of information that says you will do this and you'll do that and you'll do the other.
Right. You have the flaw. You need to then show that a separate mind came.
We've done that. DNA is information, linguistics, and algorithm.
No.
Okay, so if you're running any kind of program, just like we're
been there and
Tony,
done that.
listen, just like if we're running the program we're running right now, so we can speak to each other, we know that somebody designed this particular service for us to utilize, right? And then it requires coding, encoding, the whole shebang when it comes down to it. So, I mean, if just something as simple as this, in which we know this is pretty complex, right? This is a very complex system that we have that we're able to communicate through. Without those things, we wouldn't be able to do so. But we understand also that according to Bill Gates himself, right? This is one of the top people in creating software. He admits that DNA is a code more complex than anything we've ever created. Anything. I mean, literally anything. So if we were to assume that this is not somehow designed, you have to be able to show in a naturalistic format how that's possible. We've never witnessed anything that's come naturally, unless you're going to continuously use us animals, if you're going to call it that way. But then you have to go as far as to show how abiogenesis occurred. Without the evidence to go forward with that, there's really no way for you to verify any of the things that are assumed there. You see what I'm saying? So either way, you can say it's incredulity from our part, but it's the same thing on both sides. So saying incredulity doesn't do anything to really further the conversation.
And there's no universal imperative to deny incredulity anyway.
Right.
That's just another subjective preference.
No, I'm not saying deny incredulity. I'm just saying it's not a basis for evidence for anything.
But that's just a subjective opinion.
So the thing is, we can't infer anything by that standard, though. You shouldn't be able to infer that things just happen naturally, and I shouldn't be able to infer that God or anything else might have created it.
What Neff's just put there. What was that little message, Neff? All language written by an all-powerful author, God is evident in nature. Do you know how many questions that particular little line of text begs? It's massive. All right.
The point is, it doesn't matter.
Language requires semiotics. Semiotics is forward thinking. It's the application of meaning to symbols and interpretation of meaning from it. It's irrational to believe that material processes can consider the future. Chemistry doesn't think. It doesn't consider the future. It's irrational to.
I think what Neff and Pigs were saying is that there's a cascade effect of interdependent things. And that also what Neff was just saying now is that there's a supposition of induction, which you don't get those things naturally in art, as far as we know.
So let's take language, for instance. Like, what is language? Is it a perception in your brain?
It's the relaying of information to other sentient beings.
Yeah, that's right. Which
so that we can understand it.
It's the application. It's the deployment of a code system to, in one way or another, whether printed or spoken or something, to convey thoughts or ideas.
Yeah, you're describing language.
Yeah.
You're putting your own description on language.
Okay.
Okay. But can you have language without a brain?
Can you have it without a spirit?
What the fuck?
Well, he's trying to make the point
sorry,
that again,
I'm sorry.
this is an argument from incredulity from your part because we don't know that the brain is all that there is, right? That's
Well,
what
no,
we're
that's exactly
assuming
it. We
under
don't
naturalism.
know. We don't know. That's exactly it. But what evidence do we have right now?
I've already given
A
you
brain
some.
exists. My brain exists. Is
Okay.
it physical?
Can I provide just an example?
Oh,
Let me
why
just
doesn't anybody answer my questions?
well, no, let me
I
walk
did.
through what I call the mind-brain duality lemon test. Okay, so this isn't meant as some sort of slam. I'm honestly providing something I think might be an interesting example to consider. So it went like this, and this is real life. I was having a conversation with one of my sons, and I uncontextually pulled out a lemon. And I'm holding it as we talk. And then, lemons are appealing. They have a beautiful yellow color. And if you can imagine that scent, right, that aroma of a lemon, it's attractive. And as we're talking, I'm just having it in my hand and I'm kind of cutting it slightly with my fingernail so we can smell it. And then I suddenly asked my son, well, what's happening? And he said, well, my mouth is watering. And I said, oh, do you want to eat the lemon? He said, no. I said, well, do you even want to take one bite? No. I said, well, why is your mouth watering? So to me, that's an example of that his mechanical, naturalistic meat brain processed the lemon and started producing the saliva that would be able to deal with the harsh citric acid. But his mind had absolutely no intention of even taking one single bite. So you see the distinction between the brain that was just reacting automatically, mechanically, versus his mind, which was telling the brain, I have no intention of eating that. So
it's called the Pavlovian response. It's well documented.
Exactly. The brain is doing its own thing as the mechanical device that it is, a meat brain, but the mind tells it to go ahead and do it or not.
Once again, we're talking about this mind that's somehow separate from the brain. That's
exactly, and that's just what I was proving, is that the brain was acting on its own mechanically, but the mind had an intention to not follow along with what the brain was doing. There's a distinction there, absolutely. It was so evident.
Is the mind the id, the ego, the what is it?
Well, we can get into linguistics and semantics in a minute, but don't just run this over, because it's a clear evidence of a distinction between the intention of the mind versus the mechanism of the meat brain.
And I'm saying that your son's reaction to the lemon was an electrochemical response in his very physical brain.
Exactly. That's my point.
Yes, and that's the evidence we have.
The evidence we have
I'm not
is
saying that you're wrong or that.
No, what is? Oh my dear.
Keep in mind, you said evidence is subjective, and that evidence to you is just a personal preference. So none of this matters. I'm just sharing with you a story that tells you that you are right in what the mechanical meat brain does, but that there's something beyond that at work, which is that it didn't matter that the brain was preparing to digest. The mind was saying, no, we will not be digesting this.
What I've said about evidence is there's levels of evidence, okay? And some are more reliable than others.
Subjectively.
It's subjectively. You subjectively agree, I subjectively agree, Neff subjectively agree, Pigs subjectively agree. But we can rely on certain levels of evidence, can't we? Am I telling a falsehood here?
No, you just reiterated agreeing with me when I reiterated what you said earlier. So that's why we went on with the conversation. And now we're at the point of demonstrating the difference between the intentional mind versus the mechanical brain.
So my proposition is that all we have evidence for is the electrochemical responses between neurons in your brain.
And that's why we were discussing that all we have is our senses processing reality being a merely metaphysical dogmatic assertion. It doesn't matter. We can go with that or we can deny it. And there's no universal imperative that tells us that we ought not to live in illusion or delusion or imagination or anything else. That's just a personal preference that you have.
No, I think it's not about dogma when I say our senses are the way we relate to reality. That's the only way.
No, that's not the dogma. The dogma is that you're saying that's all we have, and therefore we should adhere to that, and we should not go with things that don't adhere to that, even though you actually already said that that's not even the case.
No, that's all we have evidence for. Like, if there's something outside that, hey, I'm all ears.
Yes, but again, your demand that we adhere to things only if we have evidence for them is a metaphysical dogmatic assertion. It's just a personal preference of yours.
Well,
and you already
you can say it that way, but I'm saying that if we rely on things that have evidence, we usually do better. Don't you think?
Well, see, we're going back to what we agree on. Yes, all of us agree on that.
Yeah.
The issue is whether you are saying that anybody who does not hear to evidence is worthy of condemnation as violating some kind of universal imperative, which you already said no. Right.
Condemnation is a very strong word. No, I'm just saying that if you are presenting a set of evidences that you consider important, then present it and let's examine it.
Right. So in other words, if somebody is completely delusional, you might have a personal preference that you wouldn't do it that way, but you don't have a problem with the fact that they are that way. So now getting back to this, I provided my evidence, the lemon test. That's what it is. That's the evidence. And now you're saying that you don't like it, even though it clearly showed a distinction between an intentional mind and a mechanical brain.
No, it didn't. Are your salivary glands not attached to your physical brain? Is your perception of the lemon and the smell and the sight of it not attached to your brain?
I already affirmed multiple times. It is exactly that way. Yes, that is the brain in action, but it's the mind that had no intention in going along with what the brain was trying to do. In other words, the brain was saying, I'm preparing a mixture of saliva to digest the lemon, but the mind was saying, don't bother. I'm not going to even take one single bite.
Yeah. Let me share something with you. A statement from Dr. Michael Egner, an award-winning neurosurgeon. It says this: the assertion that neuroscience demonstrates the material nature of the mind is an ideological assertion, a misuse of neuroscience to serve a tenuous materialist agenda. In Wolfgang Pauli's deathless phrase, the materialist explanation of mind isn't even wrong. It's a superstitious nonsense. Materialism can't explain the mind because the salient characteristics of mental states, intentionality, qualia, persistence of self-identity, restricted access, incorrigibility, and free will do not have a material explanations. A coherent and meaningful understanding of the mind requires a repudiation of this materialistic superstition. Strict materialism offers some insight into behavioral correlations. Behavioral arousal is associated with activation of neurons in the brainstem reticular activation system, but materialism offers nothing to explain the subjective properties of mental experience, which constitute the mind as we actually experience it. A genuine understanding of the mind must be open to an immaterial causation, because there is nothing in a material science or materialist philosophy that can account for subjective experience. He's made many such statements as this, and it's just irrational to believe that our subjective experience, that our minds, which produce non-physical things,
He's a creationist.
Abstract things,
He's a
are
creationist.
able to do
That's a genetic logical fallacy.
Are able to do it because of chemistry. See, we have powerful evidence that mind is not equal to brain, that we have a non-physical sentient component, and it's not the gray matter in our skull.
Then you have the flaw.
Then I would say the brain is like a computer's hardware, whereas the mind is like the computer's software. Yes, you have all the material components in the hardware. You can open it up and look at them. But then there's a code running all of it. There's a code that's expressed through it. And let me take something back. Before I agreed that it was a Pavlovian response, but it really wasn't, because Pavlov's dogs were looking forward to that meal. That's why they were salivating, is because it was a combination of their mechanical brain and then also their intention to eat the food, where in this case, there was a strict separation. The mechanical brain preparing to consume it with the mind saying, no, we're not going to.
I just don't know how to state my position any clearer. I really don't.
Well, I understand your position perfectly. You are speaking as a committed materialist, and so there's no amount of evidence otherwise that's going to change your minds.
Mouth, Ken. You're putting words in my mouth. I'm not a committed materialist.
No. Hold on. I'm sorry. What I said is that you are speaking as a committed materialist. I don't know your position. I'm saying that's how you're coming across.
What I trust is what we can maximally be certain of in our version of reality. Okay, I trust the evidence presented to me. Now, when you don't do stuff like that, when you just accept stuff because people say it, then you got cults, then you got murders, and then you got really bad things happening.
Okay,
well, we're presenting evidence to you. Let me share with you quickly another statement by that.
I have no faith in this guy.
But by this, well, he's an expert in his field. He's an award-winning neurosurgeon, professor of neurological surgery and pediatrics. He says this: memory is a psychological ability. Memory is retained knowledge. Knowledge is a set of true propositions. Propositions are beliefs that can neither be true, that can be either true or false. Memory and knowledge or propositions and beliefs are psychological things. Computers are electromechanical devices, and electromechanical devices can't do psychological things any more than people can boot up or freeze or turn on their own screensaver when they go to sleep, when they are asleep. It's a category error. We attribute memory to a computer merely as a metaphor. The attribution of memory in a psychological sense to a computer is just nonsense, a bizarre confusion of metaphor and reality. A computer has no more memory in the sense of remembering things than you can catch a train at your computer terminal. In other words, what he's pointing out is the idea is that if your brain is actually what remembers the past, you know, what you bought for your wife on her birthday last year, that kind of thing. It's nonsense to believe your brain is remembering that.
Then why have I seen people chemically, their metaphorical hard drive chemically wiped, where they don't even remember their sons or daughters? And this is done by a very...
I think because of the arguments, the evidence that I've provided and other things, we can see that the mind is dualistic. Humans are dualistic. We require a mind and a brain to exist and experience. Oh, let me finish, Tony. Hold on. Let me finish. No, let me finish. I'm getting to it. We require both a brain and a mind. Since we are minds trapped in a physical three-dimensional world, we need a brain to translate that world to us. If the brain stops working, the mind can't experience the three-dimensional world. That's going to give you mental problems. You see, because in the real world, in the physical world, you're not going to function properly anymore. See, we're dualistic. We require you screw up the brain, the mind gets screwed up. You screw up the mind, the brain gets screwed up. See, it goes both ways.
Why can I do very physical things to your brain?
But what I'm pointing out,
personality.
Personalities change without without changes to the brain.
Why can I do very physical things to your brain and wipe your whole memory?
Because of what I just said.
Because
And-
the
and-
brain
and-
is the hardware, and if
Right.
you take a baseball bat and you smash a computer, that doesn't mean the software doesn't exist. It just means it can no longer be processed through that particular bit of hardware.
And now I've given you evidence for things I can do to totally change the person you are, but you're saying there's something ephemeral above that. Are you saying that? Above your brain, that you call the mind, that somehow is connected to your deity? Is that what you're saying?
I'm sorry, I'm not trying to avoid the question. I didn't quite catch it though. If you could just.
So are you saying I can do things to your mind very physically that change your whole dynamic, who you are, who you remember, but you're saying still there's a mind above that, right, that is esoteric because I can't put my finger on it and is somehow connected to the great programmer?
Right, that's the point. And that's also the
Okay.
point of the biblical concept of a resurrection, is that when this bit of hardware wears out to the point that it can no longer process the software, then we're given a new bit of hardware.
So is part of your evidence the Bible?
Well, we agreed, I think there's levels of evidence. So of course, there's tons of evidence of all sorts of things in the Bible.
Well, subjectively, I find religion very poor evidence for anything.
Well, I'm not talking about religion. That is a tremendously generic term.
Well, do you have a holy text that you believe in?
Yes, absolutely, the Bible.
Then you are part of a religion.
And you have your own religion, your religion of secular humanism.
No,
Yes.
I don't have deities. I don't go to church.
There are tenets to your
worship.
belief system.
I don't have faith.
No,
But
Tony.
keep in
Tony,
mind-
hold on. Let me address that, please. The definition of religion has more than one definition, and one of the definitions of religion is a set of beliefs held to with an institutionalized set of beliefs held to with ardor and faith, according to Webster's dictionary, the world's foremost authority on the meaning of words. So you do have a religion because you hold to these beliefs that you have with ardor and faith. They are institutionalized. They're taught in public school. They're taught in public schools. So you have a religion, Tony. You have an institutionalized set of beliefs that you hold to with ardor and faith, and it's philosophical materialism, evolutionism, naturalism, subjective moralism, and these things are the tenets of your religion. You have a religion.
So
Religion doesn't require a deity. Okay.
Ardor is feelings. Can you define faith for me?
Christian faith?
No, just faith. Just faith. Don't dodge the question.
Okay. No, I'm not dodging. I'm just pointing out that Christian faith is not exactly the same thing as faith in general.
Okay.
I'll be glad to define it if you want.
I need to hear this.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So just one note first, James 1:27 says, pure and undefiled religion before God and Father is this, to visit orphans and widows in their tribulations and to keep oneself unstained from the world. As far as faith, biblically, faith means coming to a conclusion based on prior knowledge.
Scripture defines faith. Hebrews 1:11
Why
says.
do you think?
Hold on, Tony. Let me say this. Let me say this real quick.
Okay.
Tony, let me just say this real quick, and then you can have the mic. I just would define the Scriptures defines faith, Christian faith. It says, now faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things unseen. So, according to the Bible, faith is substantiable and evidentiary. It's not based on blindly believing something without reason. It's believed, you believe it because it's substantiable and because it's evidentiary. So according to Hebrews 1:11, Christian faith, at least, is based upon things that we can know are true because they demonstrate themselves to be true. They have evidence and they're supported by the things we observe.
Could you repeat your definition again?
Hebrews 1:11 says, now faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things unseen.
So that really has nothing to do with physical evidence whatsoever, does it?
Sure, evidence of things unseen. We don't see
Hopeful and unseen.
evolutionists have faith. They have all kinds of faith. You have faith in things you believe.
And what I was saying is that if you track the concept of faith through the entire Bible, it is a conclusion based on prior knowledge. Consistently.
So why not just call it knowledge? Why call it
Well,
faith?
that's no, you don't get to come along millennia after a text has been written and demand that it use other words. That's irrelevant. That's just semantics. That's just semantics.
Anything, Ken. I'm not demanding. I'm asking you questions.
Oh, okay. So why not use a word from the English language that didn't exist at the time? Because the English language didn't exist at the time. That's why it didn't use that word.
So are you saying that faith is based on evidence?
On the kind of evidence that we all agreed on can be subjective, sure.
So are you saying that faith is about stuff you can see, touch, feel, taste, all that sort of stuff?
There is evidence based on, there is faith based on that. So, for example, there's a certain aspect where there's a phenomena where the physical realm interacts with the spiritual realm. So, for instance, when the apostles were telling Thomas that they saw the physical resurrected Jesus, he said that he wouldn't believe until he saw him as well. And then he did, and then he believed. So there's a combination of things there. It's not all one category or the other. Reality is much more complex than sort of materialism on one side.
Hang on. Have you ever seen a talking donkey?
Oh, come on with that. Tony, let me share something with you.
Whoa.
Come on. God can't make a donkey speak. God can't
hold on. Is that a question coming from a man who believes he's a talking ape?
Yeah, good
No,
question.
okay. No,
so hold on, guys.
So very uncomfortable for you, so I'll drop the question.
Well,
no.
Let me share something with you.
The point is that it doesn't matter. If we believe in talking donkeys, it does not matter to your worldview. It's irrelevant.
Let me talk.
Because you're not demanding adherence to reality anyway.
Let me share something with you, Tony.
I'm dropping the question.
Let me share something with you, Tony. So you don't believe in God. You don't think God interacts with people. Let me share a simple testimony with you about God and His goodness and what's happened in my life recently. I'll try to be real brief about it. So I don't, and to me, this is profound evidence that God it not only exists. I don't need evidence of that. I already fully knew He existed, but it's evidence that God is tremendously good, really good. Okay, so my wife's health took a terrible downfall, and she had kidney failure and all kinds of problems and required 24-hour-a-day care. She couldn't get into it. She had her leg amputated. She was in a wreck. And I knew she didn't have much longer to live. She had internal bleeding that would come and go, and we couldn't find it. The doctors from 2 university hospitals, one in Alabama, one in Mississippi, Birmingham, they couldn't find it. But anyway, she wasn't going to live too much longer. And I knew she only had probably a few years left. So I stopped work to stay at home and take care of her 24 hours a day instead of working, because she needed somebody to be with her 24 hours a day. She couldn't get into the wheelchair and get on the couch, come back to the bedroom and get in the bed anymore. She had to have help doing that. And at that point, I decided I wasn't going to let my wife spend the remainder of her life lying in a bed in a nursing home with her own feces filling her brief, looking out a window, wishing she had someone who loved her to sit beside her. I wasn't going to I loved her too much to let her live the rest of her life out that way. So I decided I'm going to stay at home and be a stay-at-home hubby, and I'm going to fix all our meals, and I'm going to take care of her when she wants to get into the living room and sit on the couch and watch TV. I'll put her in her wheelchair. I'll push her in there. I'll pick her up, set her on the couch. We'll sit, watch TV together. We'll hug each other. We'll watch TV. We'll enjoy it. If she wants to go back to bed and lay down, I'll get her back in her wheelchair. I'll push her into the bedroom. I'll pick her up, set her in the bed, cover her up, and stuff. She had a normal mind, but she was physically completely disabled. So, because I loved her so, I decided to stay home and be a stay-at-home 24-hour-a-day hubby. Now, this meant for this to happen, we had to survive on her Social Security income. That's all we had. If I was to quit work, all we had was her little puny Social Security income check. And I had to watch every nickel for us to survive. And we made it. You know, I made home-cooked meals and everything. So I stayed at home and I took care of her for about 5 years. Excuse me, 5 years. And then she passed away just over a year ago, right? So when she passed away, I knew that when I was doing this, I was putting myself in a terrible position. I was putting myself in a position that when she passes, her Social Security money is gone, and I have no income, and I've got rent to pay, electricity to pay, and I got to buy food, and I'm screwed. But I knew that. So I thought to myself, I love her too much. I'm not going to let her sit in her own feces in a nursing home, laying in the bed, looking out a window, wishing she had someone around her who loves her. I put myself in that jeopardy, in that terrible position, that one of these days I'm going to find myself possibly homeless, maybe on the street, begging for money, or dead, just to take care of my wife. But I loved her so much that you do the extraordinary for people you love. So I did it. Well, she did die. And I said to myself, uh-oh, now here it comes. I'm screwed. I got no income. Her Social Security isn't deposited to our debit card anymore. I got no money, no income. I'm sitting in an apartment I can't pay the next month's rent. Actually, I had enough money to pay next month's rent, and that was about it. Okay, that's about all I had. Because the Social Security Administration allowed me to keep her last deposit because she died after the deposit was made. So they said, because you're her husband, we're going to let you keep that money. See, I was on the phone with them. So I've got this, enough money to survive. If I squeezed it 2 months, I could survive maybe 2 months on her Social Security money. I had nothing. So here's what I do. Numerous times, I laid my head down and I prayed and I talked to God and I cried my eyes out. And I said, God, I'm screwed. I have no income. I have no money. I have nothing. I don't have a job. This COVID thing has screwed the economy up. I'm filling out job applications online, left and right, trying to find a job, right? Can't find one. Nobody hires me. I said, God, help me. Please help me, God. I'm crying, bawling my eyes out to Jesus. Jesus, please help me. Provide something for me, a way to live. Help me, Lord. Please take pity on me. Please help me. I did this for weeks, right? I didn't know what to do. I call a friend that I have on the internet. You all know who he is. He's one of the most popular Christian apologists on the internet. I called him. I said, brother, I don't know what to do. And he's probably not the one you think I'm talking about, but he is one of them. And I said, I don't know what to do. I just called you because I want some advice. I don't know what to do. What would you do in my shoes? He said, Evan, I'm going to send you $1,000. Boom. I get $1,000 gift from a friend. Now I can survive for another month, maybe 2, if I squeeze it, because I've still got a couple of $100 left over, right? So, but time is passing. And everything I'm telling you is the truth. I took that money and I put it away, and it was in $100 bills. I paid my rent and electricity and whatnot, and I kept going back to that money to take 20 here and 40 there to go buy food, right? Because I got to eat, right? So I count that money, and every time I go into that place where I got the money hidden, I count it and see how much money I got, right? And I remember watching that money go from $560 to $540, $520, $500, $480, $460, $440, $420, because I'd keep going back for it for $20 at a time, right? To go buy some food, right? And I remember that money coming down to, it was, let's see, how much was it? That money, I counted the money, the $20 bills, and it came down to, let's see, I had $400. I had about $400, and I couldn't remember, do I have 400 or 420? I couldn't remember, because I was watching every dime. I'm trying to survive on this money. And I have nothing, no job now, no job. And I got $420 to my name. That's all I got. And it's halfway into the month. I got 2 weeks to live, or I'm on the street. So I go to the money and I start counting it. Gosh, man, how much do I have? Like 20, 40, 60, 81, 20, 40, 60, 82, 20, 40, 60, 83, 20, 40, 60, 84, 20, 40, 60, 85, 20, 40, 60, 86, 20, 40, 60, 87. What? $700? Where'd $300 come from? I'll tell you where that $300 came from. God put that $300 in my pocket. God did. Because it wasn't there. I watched that money. I went to it for $20 here, $40 there. I counted, I kept in track in my mind. I mean, look, if that's all the money you've got in your survival, it depends on it, you're going to keep track in your mind how much money you got. I promise you. I watched that money dwindle. I knew I had either $400 or $420. I couldn't remember which. I go back to count it. There's $700 in there. $300 appeared out of nowhere. Pow. Thin air. I got a gift from God, $300. Wow. I'll make it through this month. Okay, so I'm still filing applications. I'm still praying to God, bawling my eyes out. Lord, have mercy on me. Help me, please. God, provide, please, please. I get a phone call from a big multi-billion-dollar corporation. Hey, you want to come to work for us? See you here Monday, 8 o'clock. I'll be there. Boom, got a job. A job that paid enough for me to survive. But guess what? It was quite a ways from here. And it cost me a fortune because my vehicle drinks the hell out of gasoline. It was too expensive, but I could still survive. So I survived on that money. And then guess what? I'm praying to God. God, I need a job that's closer to home. This is too far away. My vehicle drinks too much gas. It's hurting me. I'm barely scraping by. Help me, Lord, help me. Please help me, God, help me. I get a phone call from another corporation that makes billions of dollars a year. Hey, you want to come to work for us? Come see us at Monday at 8 o'clock. Boom. I get a job that pays more money. And it's close to home. And I don't have to spend a fortune. Now, I'm doing great. I'm not rich. But my paychecks, they ain't so bad. I'm doing all right. I've put $1,500 into my truck to repair stuff that's old and worn out, like axle pivot bushings and stuff on that 30-year-old vehicle. I've thrown hundreds of dollars on that thing to repair it in the last 8 or 10 months because I've got expendable income. I had nothing. Now I have expendable income. All because I bent my head down and prayed to Jesus, said, God, I'm a sinner. I know I offend you. Forgive me, Jesus. Please take mercy on me. Help me, Lord. Oh, Lord, please, please help me. Please provide. Please, Lord. And God, in his infinite goodness, said, I love you, son. I'm going to care for you. And he did. He provided $1,000 from a friend, $300 out of thin air, a job, and then a job close to home, which I'm still at. And I'm doing okay. Because I bent my head down and humbled myself to God, acknowledged I'm a sinner, and pleaded for him to share his goodness with me. And he did. And I'm on my own 2 feet now. I had nothing. I had absolutely nothing. My wife passed away. I had no income, nothing. In 3 weeks, or I'm out the door. they're going to kick me out because I couldn't pay rent. And that's a true story. Now, I don't know about you, but that to me is powerful evidence for how good God is, how compassionate God is. He heard my prayers and my tears, and that I needed help, and God was willing to provide it. Now, I'm not saying I'm a great Christian or anything. I do something that pleases God. I'm so great. It's not about me, how good I am or bad I am. What it is about how good God is. And he is terribly good. And he was good to me. I went from having nothing. I was destitute, waiting to be kicked out of my apartment and live on the streets, sleep in my truck. Nothing. To having a job that pays in a terrible economic time, when COVID has wrecked so much business in this world. Not only did I go to work for a Fortune 500 corporation, but one that's doing great, making good money. Ain't worried about the COVID. COVID ain't hurting my company. They're doing great. Their profits are good. I work for a company that makes good money. And my paycheck ain't so bad. I ain't rich, but it's definitely more than I have to have every month to survive. And I got that as a gift from God. $1,000 from a friend, $300 miraculously put into in my hand by God immediately, instantaneously, instant. $300 out of thin air. And a job. And then I prayed for a better job that paid more and that was closer to home because I needed it so much. And boom, got that too. Oh, no problem, heaven. I love you, son. Here you go. I'm like, wow. To go from nothing, destitute, about to be kicked out of his apartment, to having this. Because I pleaded with God for it. And he was compassionate. Now, I don't know. I don't think material causes made any of that happen. I don't think the plan of the universe, the molecules bumping around, made any of those things take place. It was the grace of Jesus Christ that did that for me. His compassion. God is loving and compassionate. He hears people who pray to him and cry tears and beg him for help. He hears that and he's moved by that. God thinks, his heart goes out to them. He thinks, oh man, I love you. I feel you. I hear you. And sometimes, probably often, he says, I'm going to do something about that for you. You watch. And he did it for me. That's my story. That's my most recent story. And it was goodness given to me by God. You can believe it. You cannot believe it. You can say, well, that was just the circumstances. That's just what happened. You got lucky. No, I didn't get lucky. I begged God for it, and God gave it to me. That's what happened. That's my testimony. From homeless, living in a place I was about to get kicked out of, to having a job that pays enough, I ain't really worried about money right now. And I can afford to fix anything on my vehicle if I need to. I ain't rolling in dough. I don't have $5,000 in the bank. But, you know, if I save money out of 2 or 3 paychecks, I could replace the motor in my truck. That's how much money I'm making. It's not a lot of money, but it's enough. I mean, I'm not hurting, but I ain't rich. You know, I'm doing okay. And that's because God was gracious to me. Not only did he give me a job, but he turned around and then gave me another one that paid more money per hour and is much closer to home and saves me the heck out of gasoline to get to it back. Huge income improvement. All because I pleaded with him for help. And he was willing to give to me. And look, I'm not the most holy man in the world. I'm just a man who pleaded with God, and God proved his greatness, his compassion. Jesus proved his compassion. You know, there's a passage in the Bible where it says a woman reached out and touched the hem of Jesus's garment as he walked by. And immediately the countenance of Jesus came out of him to that woman, the goodness. And Jesus felt it. And he turned around and said, who touched me? And the woman said, me, Lord. And he blessed her right there on the spot. His goodness went out instantly from him. He didn't have to think, well, maybe I should bless her because... No, it was instantaneous. She reached out in faith and touched his garment, and his countenance, the scripture I think uses that word. That means the goodness, the compassion of Jesus went out of him instantly to that woman, just for reaching out in faith to touch his garment. That's in the New Testament. Because that's how good God is. Those who reach out to him with love and faith, his response to them is immediately with love and faith. Right back to them. Amazing. Anyway, that's my little story. You can believe that those things were given to me by God, or you cannot. But I'm telling you they were. Those blessings I received because of the compassion of Jesus Christ. And you're welcome not to believe it. I'm done.
Thanks for sharing that. And you have my condolences on your wife, by the way.
Thank you. We were together 29 years.
Wow. Be at peace, brother.
Thank you. I cry a tear for her almost every day.
Yes, and you should continue doing so for that relationship.
So
yeah, Tony, I'm sorry. I was going to keep it brief, but I'm sorry. I'm sorry about that, man. I did mean to keep it brief, but you get caught up in things like that, and you're passionate about it. It seems to. I guess.
I don't know. Like,
it's awesome.
I've heard this story a couple of times, and it's hard to sort of then sort of critique it or anything like that, So, what do you say from that?
You could ask yourself, what are the odds that a guy who's homeless put himself in a position of complete poverty on purpose to take care of his wife, who knew there would come a day when her income would be gone and he'd be, screwed. You better find a job real fast. Something miraculous has got to happen. You know what I mean?
Do you think Muslim has never told a story like that?
Or Hindu?
Never. I doubt never.
Yeah, or Hindu, or
I doubt never. But I would say that if something like that happened to a Muslim, I would say it would probably be rare, and it would probably be based on chance, happenstance. But the fact that Christians experience this kind of thing so many times and so many thousands. Look, you search the internet for Christian testimonies about miraculous things, you're going to find thousands upon thousands of entries. Look for those by Muslims, and what you'll find is a handful.
No,
so I think
they have a lot.
No, I don't think so. I don't think so.
Yeah, they have tons.
No, I don't believe it.
Of these type of stories.
No, I don't believe that.
Well, okay.
Yeah, I don't believe that. I don't believe that there's thousands and thousands of Muslim testimonies of miracles on the internet. I don't believe that. But I know there's thousands upon thousands upon thousands of Christian testimonies of miracles on the internet. Probably hundreds of thousands. I think that says something. I think somebody thinks they got a miracle. Yes. I think somebody believes they got a miracle on one side, and somebody really did on the other.
Is it argument to majority?
If you want to argue philosophically, is it plausible that Allah is God? I can show you it's not. And that only Jesus Christ could be God if God did exist. I can give you a lot.
The Bible and the Quran are connected.
Sorry?
No, they're not. They're not connected.
Abraham is in the Quran and the Bible.
Yeah, but the God of the Quran has a completely different personality, a different character than the God of the Bible. They can't be the same being.
Well, the way it works is that the Quran affirms that the Tanakh, the Old Testament, the Bible, is divinely inspired. So if the Bible is true, the Quran is false.
Mhm.
But yes,
Yeah,
I mean, they
I'm
both
not,
refer
I'm not
to.
even going to join in this argument, guys. Like a bunch of people like talking about their make-believe stuff and whose is not make-believe
But
and the
keep in
other.
mind, there's no universal imperative to avoid a make-believe stuff. It's just your personal preference that's subjective, and you have no reason to tell us to follow what you believe.
Well, I'm not telling you to.
Exactly.
follow
So
it.
then you can then be consistent and don't say things like that. That
What do you
contradicts
mean?
something you said
I've
before.
been totally consistent. I've been utterly consistent.
You're imposing your
belief-
subjective personal preferences on
No,
us.
no. I've been saying that I trust evidential things
Right,
that we
but you
have
can't say
evidence
anything
for.
against anyone who doesn't.
No, I'm not saying it. I'm not
Therefore,
saying.
therefore, if we're having a different conversation,
Well, that's what
consistently
Muslims are
you would
doing.
just let us instead of interrupting, just saying we shouldn't be talking like that.
No, you can talk about it. I'm just not going to join in because it's basically futile.
On your subjective opinion, yeah, I get it.
Utterly futile. You're going to argue about your subjective beliefs with his subjective beliefs about
And your
his
subjectivist
deity
beliefs.
and your deity, and then come to no argument whatsoever except create a little holy war
No.
in this particular environment.
No, I
And
can
it
give you a
doesn't matter
logical
because
argument.
you don't have absolute truth behind you. You're saying that it's perfectly
What is absolute-
acceptable for us to
Nobody
do
has
that.
absolute truth.
I can
That's
give you a
absolute
logical
truth.
argument.
Absolute truth.
Tony, I can give you a logical argument that if God exists, Jesus Christ is the only one that fits the bill. There couldn't be any other God because none of them have the characteristics necessary to be a God.
According to your Bible.
No, I can give the argument that if there is, according to rationale.
All right.
Logic,
You cannot
logic.
use scripture.
Pardon?
You can't use scripture.
Says you
That's
subjectively?
a fake requirement. It's a fake requirement.
Exactly. It's just a personal preference like everything else.
But the Bible is flawed. It's not an accurate document.
Of course.
So why should it adhere to reality?
Perfectly accurate. Nobody's ever proven the Bible inaccurate in any way. In fact, the Bible has so much historically accurate information that archaeologists and historians who are not Christians have used it to find archaeological discoveries by the thousands.
I'm not
What are you
saying it's
talking
not
about?
a history book. It's a history book.
Absolutely
history
accurate on history. Over and 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 over
It's not a
again.
science book. It's not a science book.
It's not. No.
No.
It's not a history book either.
Yes, it is.
No, it has history in it, but it's not a history book. It's a book about the relationship between God and His creation.
Okay. Well, it's a pretty disgusting one.
Subjectively to your
Portion was
personal
made out of
opinion.
dust.
Yeah. What else have I got?
with no way to condemn otherwise.
But I'm not condemning it. Well, I sort of
Exactly.
am.
So then
I'm-
you just exactly all you're doing is giving us emotional, subjective, personal opinions du jour. That's it. Period.
Yeah.
Full stop.
All I've got
Yes, I
on
get it.
that particular document is an emotional, subjective response.
It's a package of documents that have been proven to be archaeologically and scientifically accurate.
Scientifically accurate. Please point to the scientific accuracy.
Well, the Bible possesses scientific foreknowledge that would be impossible for anything written by human beings in the day that those books were written.
Can I offer one
acknowledge.
example? Here's
Hang
one
on.
example, okay? May I? One example. Today, by the most up-to-date, current, high-tech, brilliant scientist standards, we understand that our universe is a time-space matter continuum, correct?
Time, space, matter, continuum.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'll agree with
I'll
that.
go with
Time,
that, yeah.
space, metal.
Okay, very first verse in the entire Bible, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. In the beginning time, God created the heavens, space, and the earth, matter. Now, how did they know that?
Time,
By
space, and matter.
speaking.
Wow.
He
I don't
said-
know.
It says he did it by speaking.
In that same chapter.
No, not in the same chapter. We're talking about this.
Okay. I'll give you that. But then we go
So
down.
there you go. You just confirmed that the Bible made an accurate
No.
scientific prediction. Thank you.
No, I didn't. But a couple of verses down, we got plants existing without the sun. Not photosynthesizing.
You know what? Yesterday during the day, I had plants outside my window. Then I went to sleep through the night. Then I woke up the next day and the plants were still there.
Are you serious?
Because
now?
of the stored energy that the plants got from the
you
sun.
serious now?
The Bible has
Yes,
scientific foreknowledge in
of
it.
course, plants exist without light.
Astronomy, cosmology, particle physics, geology, and biology.
Can
The science-
photosynthesis happen without the sun?
No,
Yes,
of
it's
course
all
not.
photosynthesis, but other ways of
Plants can survive 24 hours without the sun, though.
Was it 24 hours though?
Do you
Yes.
see?
It was
Yeah.
just
Plants can
24
survive for a
hours.
lot longer
Scriptures
without the
tell us
sun.
it's
But
24
the
hours.
point is, I was asked for a specific example. I provided one in the very first verse of the Bible, and the response seems to be, let's jump to the next one.
Okay. Well, the
It's a
very
different
first
chemical
the
reaction
very
than
first verse
photosynthesis.
of the Bible is shallow, and to think that actually specifically refers to the invention of time, space, and matter, I think is a reach. It's a straw.
That's your subjective opinion, and you can't impose
That's
it
all I
upon
have.
anybody else. Exactly. So
That's
that
all
means
I
it's
will
meaning,
ever do.
that means it's meaningless. Now, what also we have in the very first verse is God creating the time, space, and matter. Therefore, he would be outside and beyond and not subject to time, space, and matter, which would mean that he's immaterial, without specific locality, and eternal. So therefore, we get a basic cosmology and a basic theology in one single verse.
Why do you guys need to believe this?
He's a non-physical.
So let me share something with you. The scriptures say, when it comes to, let me share the passages with you. I'm going to show you an example. Okay, so Job 38 says, "Where is the way that white light dwelleth? As for the darkness, where's the place thereof? That thou should takest it to the bound thereof, and thou should knowest the path to the house thereof." In other words, the Bible is saying, where's the boundary between light and dark? And how do you know how to trace light back to where it bounces off something and where it comes back to something? Thou could take it to the bound thereof. In other words, to where it bounds back. Okay, so trace it back to the house. That's the place of its origin thereof. The Bible says light travels distance over time, hits things, bounces back, and comes back to where it came from, and goes other places also. That's particle physics in the Bible. Until 1705, nobody prior to Sir Isaac Newton had published the idea that light travels distance over time. Mankind thought light was instantaneous. But Sir Isaac Newton published his physics in 1705 and explained that light travels distance over time because it's particular. Okay?
So let me
So
get this straight.
the Bible has
I-
particle physics accuracy about
Yes,
particle
particle
physics, and the
Well, it's also
fact
a
that,
wave.
let me finish, please. The fact that light travels distance over time and it's not instantaneous was explained by the Bible in the book of Job, which was written about 1400 to 1440 BC. Nobody on the earth thought light was anything but instantaneous until Sir Isaac Newton, 1705. But the Bible knew it 1440 years before Christ. That's 1440 years plus 1705 years. The Bible was 4,000 years ahead of modern science on the fact that light travels distance over time. And there's numerous other examples of scientific foreknowledge in the Bible I can provide, like microbes. The Bible describes microbes and how to deal with infectious bacteria with hundreds of passages, hundreds in the books of Deuteronomy and Numbers. It's unbelievable. It's statements about particles, about bacteriology. It's absolutely amazing. So here's an example. The Bible says, "And do ye abide without the camp 7 days. Whoever hath killed any person, and whosoever hath touched any slain, purify both yourselves and your captives on the 3rd day and on the 7th day. And purify all your raiment, and all that is made of skins, and all the work of the goat's hair, and all things made of wood." And Eleazar the priest said unto the men of war which went into battle, "This is the ordinance of the law which the Lord commanded Moses. Only the gold and the silver and the brass and the iron and the tin and the lead, everything that may abide the fire," in other words, if it can survive the fire, abide means to wait in or wait upon, "ye shall make it go through the fire, and it shall be clean. Nevertheless, it shall be purified with the water of separation." In other words, not only that, burn it with fire, and then take it out and wash it in water anyway. "And all that abideth not the fire," in other words, if it can't survive fire, if it would burn up, like if it's made of leather or wood or fur, okay, "it shall be cleaned with the purification of water." Okay, so this is sterilization by fire. He says, those things made of gold, silver, brass, iron, tin, and lead, you put it in a fire, you bake it a little while, and then you take it out and wash it with water, and it's clean. That's sterilization. Now, why would the Bible talk about sterilization by fire if the one who inspired these words didn't know that there's bacteria? But they didn't know anything about bacteria in 1400 BC or 1200 BC.
They know about purification, though.
They
didn't know anything about bacteria in 14. They didn't know anything about bacteria in 1200.
Purification, though. Purification isn't
purification.
Sterilization.
Why purification? They didn't know anything about purification. What are you talking about? They didn't know that bacteria existed in 1200 BC.
No, they knew that fire would cleanse things.
No, they didn't know that. They did. That would mean they have to knew about bacteria. They didn't know bacteria existed then. The first human being that ever laid eyes on a bacteria was Leeuwenhoek, a Dutchman, with a microscope that he created, numerous pieces of glass, in 1522.
You don't
That's
have
1522. Nobody knew that bacteria existed in 1400 or 1200 BC. What are you talking about?
But you don't need to know about bacteria to know that fire burns away a lot of things.
No, fire burns away something that makes you sick. How do you know it will make you sick unless you know about bacteria?
Gents, let me interrupt for just a sec. I just wanted to say I'm going to have to go. Neff, it's been a pleasure. If you look in the private chat, if you are able to contact me, you can do so through that link. And it's been a pleasure. I wanted to tell Tony it's been a genuine pleasure interacting with him. And nice talking at least a little bit with you, Brandon, as well. So good night, gents.
Okay, thanks.